1,000 years before the establishment of the modern state of Israel, there existed a Jewish kingdom in the eastern fringes of Europe, astride the Don and Volga rivers. So begins a thesis by Jewish author Kevin Allen Brooke. The kingdom of which he speaks appears at first consideration to be comprised of nearly as much disinformation, misinformation, misinformation, and, curiously, no information as there is actual, provable historical fact. Yet upon closer scrutiny this kingdom, known as Khazaria, or the kingdom of the Khazars, is clearly revealed in a vast body of historical evidence, much of which has come to light only in the last 3 to 5 decades. This mysterious kingdom, which has sculpted our modern world to an astounding and alarming degree, once occupied an immense land area of over 1 million square miles extending from western Hungary/Austria eastward to the Ural Sea, north to the upper Volga, and its southern region extending to the Caucasus Mountains between the Black and Caspian Seas. It was at that time literally the largest country on Earth. It has only been in the last several decades, however, that greater, documented evidence from ancient manuscripts has come to light and revealed the astonishing historical truth of this ancient kingdom and its connection to the origins of modern-day Israel. Though little known to the West, and, for that matter, to even those currently occupying its ancestral land, the Khazar kingdom has been responsible for substantially shaping the history and political landscape of Europe and specifically Western Asia, but also to a remarkable degree the entirety of human events on this planet. Arthur Kosetler, author of The 13th Tribe, easily the most expansive single work on the subject, states, "The story of the Khazar Empire, as it slowly emerges from the past, begins to look like the most cruel hoax which history has ever perpetrated. This is the story of a kingdom of belligerent, warlike Caucasian nomads, having no linked ancestry with anything Israelite this side of Noah, yet adopting Talmudic Judaism and becoming the dominant and virtually only current force in 21st century international Jewry." During the course of this work, salient facts and issues will be presented without a too extensive reliance on tedious historical documentation. However, considering the delicacy of the subject, especially in this modern age, where any divergence from certain agendas for political correctness can result in epithets of racism or anti-Semitism, and for the obvious sake of accuracy, reasonably comprehensive documentation is necessary. In this it will be shown that the cry of anti-Semitism hurled against those who do oppose the international actions of ones calling themselves Jews would be much like an immigrated Scotsman to America deciding to live on an Apache Indian reservation, coming to dominate its politics and economics, and then claiming that anyone disagreeing with his political and social agenda is racist and anti-Apache in their beliefs. What under different circumstances could prove to be his right treatise on Eastern European Jewish history is, if closely examined, actually a narrative of events that have laid a sequential pathway to and beyond the destruction of the New York World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. This historical timeline has been fixed in its present course, which, by all appearances and in a most unexpected manner, is culminating in the fulfillment of the biblical prophecies of Armageddon. But then, it has always been so with prophecy. The most consistent aspect in the nature of prophetic fulfillment is that it is consistently surprising. God has invariably worked to complete his desires, prophetically, in ways that have not been understood until revealed in retrospect in the light of their actual happening. Historians believe the Khazars to be descendants of the Turkic tribe known as the Huns or Han that invaded and savaged Europe from Asia around 450 AD. The Huns' territories stretched at one time from Central Asia to Central Europe, from Siberia and China to North India. They were a grouping of tribes and bloodlines from the interbreeding with many peoples, including the Chinese and the Sumerians. The Huns are best remembered for their leader, Attila the Hun, who seized power by killing his brother, Buda, after whom the Hungarian city of Budapest was named. Like the Huns, the Khazars spoke the Turkic language and are believed to be the same people. The Khazars controlled a large and powerful pagan empire across most of Russia to the Ural Mountains in the east and the Caucasus Mountains in the south, and they made their living as traders and middlemen, levying taxes on the goods carried on the trade routes through their lands. Their influence in Eastern Europe extended well into the countries we now know as Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria, figure 7, below. The Khazars were folk worshippers and engaged in human sacrifice rituals. In a series of wars, the first, from 642 to 652 AD, and the second, from 722 to 739 AD, some 300,000 Khazar warriors prevailed against invading Muslims. They saved Russia and Eastern Europe for Christianity, which had also been defended on other fronts by the armies of Charles Martel, the Hammer, the leader of the Merovingian Franks. Martel was the grandfather of Charlemagne, to whom 34 of the 43 presidents of the United States are descended, together with the royal families of Europe. In about 740 AD, King Gulen, the king of Khazaria, adopted the religion of Judaism, and the whole nation did the same. Legend says that King Gulen was told to do this in dreams or visions, but it was clearly a political move to avoid being absorbed by the Christian or Islamic world on either side. What is for certain is that the Khazars, the ancestors of at least 90% of those calling themselves Jewish today, had nothing whatsoever to do with a land called Israel. Their home was not the Dead Sea, but the Caspian Sea, which became known as the Khazar Sea. This is the area targeted by the Illuminati today for its immense oil and gas reserves. Arthur Koestler writes that a warrior nation of Turkish Jews must have seemed to the rabbis as strange as a circumcised unicorn. 6 There were, apparently, two streams of Khazar known as the Kara or black Khazars and the Ak or white Khazars, although Arthur Kosetler says this may not have been related to the color of their skin. The Khazar Empire, the first feudal state in Eastern Europe, broke up in a series of wars and invasions culminating in the arrival of the Mongol Golden Horde, best remembered for their inspiration, Genghis Khan. Over the centuries of power and influence, the Khazar peoples began to emigrate in many directions. S.W. Barron said of Khazaria in A Social and Religious History of the Jews, its population was largely absorbed by the Golden Horde, which had established the center of its empire in Khazar territory. But before and after the Mongol upheaval, the Khazars sent many offshoots into the unsubdued Slavonic lands, helping ultimately to build up the great Jewish centers of Eastern Europe. Khazars took their Judaistic or Talmudic faith and settled in many East European and Alpine lands, especially Poland and Lithuania. There are many ancient place names in Poland and the Ukraine inspired by the name Khazar or Zid, a term meaning Jew. These include Kozarzowiec, Khazara, Khazarzo and Zidowo. As the Khazar Empire collapsed in the period after 960, a number of Slavonic tribes, led by the Polans, formed an alliance that became the state called Poland. Jews, Khazars, played an important role in the Polish legends about the formation of the country. One says that a Jew, called Abraham Prakaunik, was elected by the tribes to rule them. 14 Certainly Khazar Jews became pro-enlightenment in many countries of Eastern Europe. Arthur Koestler writes, both the Hungarian and Polish sources refer to Jews employed as mintmasters, administrators of the royal revenue, controllers of the salt monopoly, tax collectors and money lenders, that is, bankers. This parallel suggests a common origin of those two immigrant communities, and as we can trace the origins of the bulk of Hungarian Jewry to the Magyar-Khazar nexus, the conclusion seems self-evident. Koestler points out that the traditional garb of Polish Jewry is of unmistakably Eastern origin. The skulkop, yarmalka, is worn to this day by Orthodox Jews and by the Uzbeks and other Turkish people in the Soviet Union. What happened in this period is that the people formerly known for centuries as the Khazars became known simply as Jews, and their true origin was lost. In its place, their leaders sold to them and the rest of the world a false history. This was the belief that they were the biblical Jews, and the fallacy continues to this day with devastating consequences for peace in the Middle East. The Khazar Jews were confined to ghettos as a result of papal dictate in the mid-16th century, and this, together with the 17th century Cossack, ironically, massacres in the Ukraine, led to another mass exodus into Hungary, Bohemia, Romania and Germany. There were hardly any Jews in Germany until this time. Thus the great trek to the west was resumed, says Kosetler. It has to continue through nearly 3 centuries until the Second World War, and became the principal source of the existing Jewish communities in Europe, the United States and Israel. So what does all this mean for the official history of the Jewish people? Kosetler, who was himself born in Budapest, writes, It would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Volga.